That's okay. And if there's anything that you don't want shared, I can edit stuff out at the end of it, just so that it's a record for you, and it does mean other people can join in as well. So just it'd be really great to just go around quickly your kind of feelings about applying for Arts Council funding, any kind of anxieties, or if you've done it before or not, and what your just a little brief conversation about what you want to achieve from it. And then there are lots of reasons why we can ask the Arts Council for funding. So just be great to get a sense of where everybody's at. Ollie, do you want to start? Oh, he's frozen.
Wicked, guys. Do apologise.
Ollie, I can't hear you. You're breaking up. Do you want to switch your video off?
Guys, hello.
Do you want to switch your video off?
Yeah. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sort of.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Please stick on. I'm a little bit annoying, but you.
Ollie, I can't hear anything that you're saying.
Sorry about that. It might be better if like I'm here to listen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Sure. Oh, thank you.
I think you're applying for a tour, aren't you? Isn't it for you can just put in the chat very quickly. Oh no, you can't. It's on the phone. That's probably really difficult. If you can put something in the chat, do. I'll just go on to Hannah. Hannah, what you're hoping for?
So I'm hoping to be able to secure some money for a research and development phase of creating a piece of children's theatre for the 8+ market. It's something I haven't done before in terms of creating a show. So yeah, that's sort of what I'm aiming for.
Have you had, so is it the first time, something you haven't done in terms of funding for?
In terms of funding, I haven't done research and development. I have actually applied for funding before, and I was successful in a project grant. But that was like a full project grant, so that was to create a stage for Village Green here in Southend, and also as part of that to then run an education program alongside that.
Great.
So yeah, so I've sort of done an outreach project alongside a festival.
Great.
Sort of bid.
So R&D, that's great. I mean, we've got some experience of applying for R&D, and we're actually, Kristin, who's here, was on the session, the last lump of sessions that we did, probably about, I can't remember how long ago it was, Kristin. It was about...
lockdown, wasn't it?
It was during lockdown, yeah. And you applied for R&D.
Yeah.
And went through this process and you got it.
Yeah.
And what are you applying for now?
So now I guess it's tour funding to the show sort of being made, to get it properly made and
great. And Kristin, you've very kindly said that we can look at your application, and I blacked out names. I hope I've done all of them. But that will be really useful for you, Hannah. So Ollie, I think the conversations that we're going to have with Kristin about touring probably will apply to you. And then Matt, you've had a really useful experience of applying for Arts Council funding, because you resubmitted an application, didn't you?
I think it might have been the 4th go we finally got it funded.
Yeah,
it took a while. So that one was for writing an art book with local artists, 20 local artists and 28 from London and Essex. And that was part funded by Arts Council. Some was through crowdfunding, some was from Havering Changing, some was from Havering Council. So it was a blended one. And we were hoping this time to just get all the funding from one place, ideally. So we'd like to put in a grant for a second book, which is with looked after children in Havering and also people who've left care up to about age 24. And so it's a similar sort of book, but with a different group of people, and all the learning from the first book we already have, and all of the process of applying we already have, but it's a much bigger and much more ambitious grant this time.
Okay, cool, brilliant. So hi Sarah, how are you doing?
Hello there, sorry for being late.
No, don't worry. And Sarah, why are you, what are you here for?
Yeah, I'm interested in learning about funding. I volunteered with Queen's Theatre and really appreciate your work as well. So yeah, I'm just here to listen. Yeah.
With a view to applying later at some point.
That's it, yeah. So I'm a trained facilitator. I trained at Central School of Speech and Drama. So I've worked with NCAP, leading drama workshops. I'm also a filmmaker and photographer. I've just done a stop motion course as well, and just wonder if there's something I can bring to the community. I've also got health issues and have been shielding. So that's been my challenge recently. So it's like, what can I do from home? Any applications that I can apply for with Arts Council. So yeah, just here to listen.
Brilliant, great. Just, ask any questions at any point. And also do our team, because obviously we've got 3 people here who have applied, and I've applied before. I mean, obviously I've done MPO applications here, but I've also applied. I used to run my own company before I came to the Queen. So I think I applied for 7. I went, project to project, but based on Arts Council project funding. So there are about 7 that I did. And I think, there's a whole range. Obviously, people here are already talking about lots of different things of what they're going to apply for. R&D, organizational development, which is, what it says. And we very successfully supported an application from Habit Factory here for organizational development, and Mauer Theatre Company. That was a very successful application that came through, supported by us recently, which is the first.
Oh, is Danielle part of that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know Danielle. Oh, fab.
Yeah, so I helped them with that application as well. So there's organizational development, R&D, then obviously touring, and then very specific projects as well. I mean, obviously, Mad, sorry, forgive me, but obviously my knowledge is quite theatre, but it should apply. It should apply across.
I don't really think. I think obviously there is a difference, but I think in terms of the grant application, I think it's not that different, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it is just for those who haven't done it before. The Arts Council was set up after the Second World War. It's an arm's length body which receives a certain amount of money from DCMS, so from the government. It's quite unusual. We're quite lucky in this country because obviously quite a lot of funding in different countries comes directly from the government. And then there is some tricky political shaping in the way that they deliver, they choose people to deliver funding to, or might interfere in certain projects. Obviously, we have a culture war going on, so that's an interesting thing in terms of funding. But brilliantly, the funding comes from the Arts Council, which is separate from the government. And I think the thing to always think about the Arts Council is they're looking for people to deliver what they're set up to do. Is they're looking for people to fund, to deliver cultural engagement for the nation and to develop the world. But they understand that culture is a really brilliant way of creating social cohesion, about nourishment of our lives and our imagination and our understanding of our place within the world, and brings communities together, and that it can reach people that lots of government bodies can't really do. And increasingly, unusually, the Conservative government actually is, and local councils, certainly Conservative councils and all local councils, are understanding more and more that culture is a really brilliant way of solving lots of their problems. So their arts councils, they're really looking for people to deliver what they're set up to do. I'm going to do some screen sharing. So they're not, they're really looking for really brilliant projects which are going to change people's lives and really enhance people's lives. And if that's what you're doing, then it's quite likely that you will get funded. It's just the application, it will feel a little bit like writing an essay at school or university. It's quite it can feel really hard work at times, can't it? Kristin, what was your experience of writing it?
Oh, it was horrible. Horrible. I pulled my hair out so many times. Like, had I not had this support, I don't think I could have done it. But what was good about it is in the writing of it, I definitely understood more about the project. So that process actually was really helpful.
And they ask you a number of questions that you have to respond to, and they don't give you very much space to do it. So it can be a bit tough getting all your ideas out in a really limited amount of characters, which I'll take you through as we go through. But what Kristin said there is, I think it's one of the most important things to remember whilst you're doing it, is that the writing of the application, and it's not a linear, there are set questions that you have to answer, but it's not a kind of very chronological linear process. But the writing of it, and you can sort of whiz between bits, because I think by the time you get to the later questions, you probably want to go back to the beginning, because what it forces you to do is to really think about what your project is. I think your project probably comes to life through and becomes quite nuanced and developed through the writing of the Arts Council application. So certainly for me, I always found that I had a better project in my at the end of it on paper than I did in my head when I first started. So I think in the really difficult moments of going through the application, just bear with it, because I think it is prompting you to think in particular ways, and it really is asking you to really dig into the ideas, and particularly who you want to reach and why. That it really tests your idea, and that by the end of it you might have a better project. And certainly last time that we did these sessions, one of the members of the group changed their project after the first session. So they started with an idea and then actually came back with a completely different idea afterwards. And it was successful that she got the funding, and that's because it was a really brilliant idea. So I think also be prepared to throw some stuff out and then come back, or just keep following, where you're going and make those adjustments as you go. Similarly, I mean, Mad just said that, you applied 4 times. So that is really...
The bit that was hard for me was every time we had to re-enter the information. That was hard in itself, because you did have to restart the grant from scratch, but also because our timeline kept shifting. So I had a lovely project timeline and I had a lovely touring schedule. So I wasn't just rewriting it and re-entering it. Every single time I was revising. But as you said, by the end of it, I couldn't really find fault with the application. Like, after we'd gone through the process, it was a really good application. And in a way, the rejection means that you refine and refine and refine, and you ask for lots of help. So, there is a positive to it not going through the first time, but it did mean that the project took a lot longer to get started and to happen than we were planning.
Yeah, and somebody else who was in these sessions submitted an application and it was turned down, and she's just submitted a new application, and it's a very different project. And I think it's a stronger project as well. So, it is a bit devastating when you get turned down, because you've put all of that work in and then you have to wait a number of weeks. But I think I really feel very strongly if it's a good project and it really is engaging with people and really giving them an insight into, giving them some sense of creativity, which and sense of expression, or that they're seeing their lives reflected in the work for the first time, that their lives are enhanced in some way, then I think it will quite likely get through. So I'm just going to do some screen sharing. Okay. So, and this is the paperwork around the Arts Council stuff and all the information on project grants. So they run a number of different funding streams. So the one that we're looking at is project grants. For freelancers, there's also another, because there are there are funding streams also for organizations as well, and for libraries and galleries, and the streams change quite frequently. There's a capital stream at the moment for MPO organizations like ourselves, but the kind of two constants at the moment are the National Lottery project grants, and that's the one that we're looking at. There's also another one which is Develop Your Creative Practice. And that might be, I'm thinking for Sarah, if you're looking for funding, is maybe have a look at that strand as well of funding. And that is exactly what it is. It is about developing your creative practice. That's sort of creating a kind of real step change, like really doing something quite new or expansive in terms of who you are as an artist. That is also another good one. So sometimes people put in applications with projects or personal development into the wrong project. So just have a look at, it's called Develop Your Creative Practice, and you'll be able to find that on the Arts Council, because that sounds like that might be something that might be useful for you too. But we're looking very, very specifically at project grants here. There is strategy, a 10-year strategy from the Arts Council, which is called Let's Create. And this strategy, they've taken quite, it's been a huge amount of investment and exploration and consultation of what the Arts Council is for. They've only had 2 strategies so far. The first one expires and we're going into a new strategy. The previous one was really about arts for all and excellent, sort of very high quality work that was reaching, potentially reaching every individual in the country. And so that every person in the country had access to excellent culture. This new strategy, which you can find here, and what I'll do is at the end of the session, I will send you a whole load of links to these documents. This is a new one, and brilliantly, the Arts Council, which we don't, I only found this more recently, and I've been doing this for quite a long time, is that they produce an easy read booklet of everything. And I really, really find that the easy read is a really brilliant one to start with, because obviously they give us some pictures and they put it into really sort of minimal words, because they do have a tendency to use quite a lot of language, and often it's quite arts professional language. So have a look at that, because they're using this really to measure all of the funding that they give in all the different kinds of streams, and increasingly this will become the case over the next few months as well. But Let's Create is, again, what it says. Before it was kind of excellent art for everyone, and this one is about creativity, but essentially at the core of it is about ensuring that every individual within the country has the possibility and the potential to be creative. And there are a number of different ways that they're thinking about that. So it is so it does a real switch. So it's not just about the people making the work and a level of excellence that is then presented to, or where people participate in the excellent work. It is now also about people being creative as an individual, so that everybody has the right to be creative. That does also include quite traditional forms of engagement. So in the same way as experiencing a piece of theatre, or experiencing a piece of fine art, or experiencing a book, or music isn't really linked within the Arts Council project funding, and film generally. I mean, I say this is a bit of a tricky territory. Film isn't also funded by the Arts Council, because film is funded by the BFI, but there can obviously within our work be elements of music and film.
Yeah, I suppose the idea I had a while ago was because there was quite a lot of people shielding and not able to access, like the drama workshop I lead. I haven't led it since March 2020 now, because I can't be there in person. I can explain that more. But so there's a group of people that actually aren't able to access the things that they were able to access. And because I'm trained as a drama facilitator, I could potentially bring that to people remotely, something like that. So I'm quite open-minded about all my skill set and what I can make.
Well, great. That sounds like that's something that would fit within the project, within project grants. But we can, as it progresses, you might be able to unpick that a little bit more. Yeah. So this is the main website, obviously, for project grants. There is a bit of a strange thing that Madge came across, and I knew it was going to happen, and rather brilliantly, Madge has spoken to a relationship officer. So a relationship officer is basically somebody that works in the Arts Council and talks, engages with the artists. But there is going to be some change in project grants in November. I think it's November the 21st, isn't it, Madge?
I think she said the last date for applications was the November the 19th, I think, under the old system.
Yeah.
Whatever she's told.
Yeah, no, that might be right. And under that one, because at the moment there are two different applications. There's for under 15,000, and then there's above 15,000, and they're quite different applications. And they have, obviously over 15,000, they ask you for much more information.
Doug, I heard that was possibly changing now to 20. Is that right?
It's 30.
Oh, okay.
That will be the lower limit. So which is really brilliant. That's really great. But that's going to come into force I thought originally they were going to bring it in September, but that wasn't the case, and it's coming in November, and they will be releasing. So Cheryl rather brilliantly told me today that they're releasing the guidance for that. So they're going to make some adjustments to this stream of funding, but I think at the moment, just don't worry about that. Let's just follow it as it is. And then I think that what they might do in the old applications, you used to have 10% of your funding as match funding, so that you had found 10% of. So if if it's 10 grand that you're asking for, that you've already got a grand from somewhere, and that can be yourself, or it could be the Queen's Theatre, or that you've got that in other funding. So there's match funding, and they got rid of that during the pandemic. I have a feeling that they might be reinstating match funding later on. So, but I think it's really good to get match funding if you can, because anyway, that just makes your application much, much stronger. But we'll go through kind of partnerships and match funding. They have, so at the moment, this current additional supplement, so it's up until the 30th of November, so I'll get those dates for you properly. She did put them in an email for me. But at the moment, there is new guidance to the current, because this changed because of the pandemic. So project grants closed until April this year, because the money was being used as emergency funding There were different streams. So they closed project grants and then reopened them in April. And within this, there was new guidance, but this stops in November. But we should consider this at the moment. So we will be taking the current context into consideration. So that project grants will be working in the world. We understand that the context applicants to project grants will be working in is very different in the post-COVID-19 world. We'll be taking the current context into consideration when we make our decisions, and we expect the type of applications we will receive will reflect the changed circumstances. So Sarah, what you're talking about is this is absolutely fits you. And I don't think, I think there will still be some element of this in the next stage of project grants, because obviously what we have learned is that we need to reach, isolated and vulnerable people. And that has been one of the great successes to come out of the pandemic is that we've all been forced to obviously work in a very different way. And I think there will be some progression. So I think what you're talking about might actually will carry through to this, but it certainly applies now. We can support projects that directly deliver creative and cultural activity and content for audiences visited. So we will continue to support a wide range of different applications from organizations, from individuals, but because of the circumstances during COVID-19, we will be particularly keen to support applications from individual creative practitioners, including time to think and plan, research and development activity. So obviously, Hannah, that's you, organizational development activity, live activity that aligns with the government's roadmap out of lockdown. So an applicant should stay up to date with the latest guidance. An activity that closely aligns with our equality objectives. Yeah. There is a high demand in applications increasingly because of the pandemic. And because of this change in this guidance, that it was much more focused on freelancers, of course, which is really, really brilliant. But that meant there are a huge, I think the number of applications is much, much higher than before. And they've extended the time that it takes to consider the applications, which at the moment under 15,000 is 10 weeks to process the application, and what happens is you write the application, it's processed, it goes to a panel, and then they make a decision. But that process takes 10 weeks. So when you're thinking about your project timeline, this is what Madge was talking about, is putting a timeline in and then having to apply again and recreate all of that timeline. Is you need to really consider carefully that you have enough time to deliver your project if it takes 10 weeks. If it's over 15,000, I think it's 12 weeks. So just to go through the kind of the basics here, it doesn't close my window. There are 3 steps to applying, and at any point do ask questions if things get a bit confusing, because the really hard thing about trying to work with all of this, the website, is there's a lot of words and there are lots of supplementary guidance, and I always get in a bit of a loop in the Arts Council website of going round and round and round to actually find where certain things are, but I will send you where all of those.
I really like the easy read as well, because I've been on the Arts Council a few times and just found it really overwhelming, even with the videos, but the easy read just made it a bit more simple.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. They say take the quiz. We'll just go through this because I do think it is an interesting thing, and we have done. It's my project ready. So you take this a little quiz. I won't go into this in detail because we'll go through this in the Arts Council application, but I think these are really interesting things to really think about now as we start to go deeper into the application. Does your project focus on one or more of our supported art forms and disciplines? So this is what they dance, literature, museums, music, theatre, visual arts, combined arts, and libraries. So not film. So we say yes. Yeah, that was my mistake. They do support music. Do you have a clear idea of what your project is about and why you want to, what you want it to achieve? To hear, can you describe it in one sentence? Madge, can you describe yours? Yours is quite formulated, so I'm jumping on you. Can you describe it in one sentence?
We want to create an art book featuring work created by looked after children and children who've left care.
Great. Yeah, that's good. That's really good. Is it place specific?
It'll be, yeah, from Havering.
From Havering.
Children either based in Havering, or they might be Havering children who are housed elsewhere but that are looked after through Havering Council.
Great, brilliant. I think that's interesting. One thing just to flag up there, Havering has the lowest Arts Council. Well, I think that might have changed, hopefully, because of the support that we've been giving people, but it had the lowest Arts Council applications in the whole of London. And so there are particular areas of the UK that have fewer, and they do try and have a geographical spread. And so that there are areas, obviously, in the UK and in London that will be looked on more favorably than other places. And so London, you think that London's really competitive for funding, but I didn't realize until I came to the Queen's that they do look borough by borough. And Havering is, is a good place. South Essex is equally, a very strong case as well.
Actually, it's not one sentence. I should have included.
Go on.
We'll also be providing work for local artists, because the artists from the first book will come and deliver training to the young people. So it will provide work for other local artists as well as engaging with the children. So we'll be able to name some artists on the application who will benefit from it as well.
That's brilliant. That's really good. That feels really concise. And so you're already on your way to writing that first brief description of your project. Hannah, can you do one sentence as a bit? Don't worry if not. It's a really hard thing.
I've got a period of to undertake a period of research and development for a theatre piece for young people exploring freedom and happiness and what both mean post-pandemic.
Great.
That could be too short.
It's good. So great. We said yes. Do you know who your project is for and how they will experience it? And have you thought about how you will reach them? This is a really big one, because the one on the Arts Council applications I've helped on quite a few over the past couple of years, the section of public engagement, which is what this question is often the weakest point. That's the thing that applications always fall down on, is public engagement. That they felt that the argument or the clarity of the idea around how they will experience it and who and how you're going to reach them. Because that's obviously what the Arts Council set up to do, is to ensure that everybody is reached and that the experience that they have is quality and also is pertinent to today, and that it's reaching underserved communities and or individuals. So this is a really big question. Kristen, do you want to try for this? Do you know who your project is for? Because you're talking about touring, and I know touring is really tricky. About if you're going to a number of different places. We were just talking about this earlier on, weren't we, Kristen? When we had is it for?
I mean, it is not solely for, but it's largely targeted at people and families that have been affected or experienced brain injury of any kind.
Yeah, that's really specific. That's really, really brilliant. And then also it appeals to what the audiences,
working class audiences, I think.
Yeah.
It also a large part of it's about being single and women. So I think there's that element of it. I mean, I think I can probably find more, but I think predominantly people that have been affected by brain injury in some way.
Yeah, great. So, and then it can be for theatre goers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It can be for everybody.
Yeah.
But if you just say it is for everybody, then it won't. You need to really prove that you're really engaging the underserved in some aspect of your work. And the tricky thing is then how will you reach them? So Madge, how will you reach the people that your project is for?
So for the children and young people, we're already engaging with Cocoon and with the council services to build relationships. And we're also hoping to go through perhaps the theatre group that you've already had and the relationships you've got with those young people and basically start building trust. So for the young people, we'll be going out to them in their places. In terms of libraries who might receive the book, secondary schools who might receive the book, we've already engaged with them from the book before. And partners that we've already engaged with, they won't experience it. So I suppose it's more like, yeah, it's the library users again, it's the secondary school children, it's the children, and it's the artists. So I suppose in a sense, we're already building the branches to reach them at the moment.
Brilliant. And Kristen, you've got ideas of how to reach people because of the organisation that you're working with.
Yeah, I'm working with Headway, so I'm working with their local community groups, and I'm going and doing workshops with people that have been affected by brain injury, and I'm working on how to access a bit more of the families, because those people are they are sort of underserved, really. There's not really much support for them. So I'm speaking to some professors and doctors at the moment that actually do work surrounding that, but Headway will be the main organisation.
It's a great, you're already thinking of really, because all that, and we'll get to that question, so I won't go into this too much.
I think this is actually, Douglas, is one of the ones that I think is really difficult when it's R&D approaching it, because it feels like it's once it's in performance, you know, or not, or once it's shaped as a fully formed performance piece.
That's a really good question, Hannah. And what I think, if you're doing are you doing a sharing of the project?
Yes, yeah.
You can talk about who you will bring into the sharing, and you might want to target specific. If you think long term, who you want the project to be. So if you go on to apply for project funding for, it goes on tour or it's doing a run somewhere. In this application, it's really good always to talk about who the eventual audience is going to be.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah.
And you can talk about that. And then you say for your sharing, to test the work, that you're engaged with 10 young people from underserved area, and that you have this connection to bring a relationship with that school or a relationship with a particular community group to bring those people into the R&D sharing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's great. Lovely, thank you.
But you should always talk about in the long term who your audience is going to be as well, but you won't have to be so detailed about how you're going to reach them. But if you're doing a sharing, they'll be the people that are experiencing the work. Yeah, so it's not as hard as something like what maybe Kristen or Ollie. I know Ollie, I think Ollie has gone, but what Chris, oh no, he's still there, great. And Emily and Carol here as well, who I didn't spell. But whereas Kristen will have to go into, venue by venue really, and how she's going to reach and create a narrative around how she's going to reach people for what is essentially a UK tour. But venues might be able to help with that as well. Have you planned your project budget and thought about how much you will need from us? This is a really mean question, because I sort of think you have to write the application to work out what you need. So they do ask for a figure at the beginning of the application, but don't be frightened of that. I think, did you know, Kristen, how much you needed when you started?
Absolutely not.
So don't be so, don't worry so much about this, except for you have a vague idea if it's going to be under £15,000 or not, or if we go into the next pot, the next stream, 30,000, because the budget's really is hard to do. Are you working with partners or other organizations to deliver your project? Madge, you are. Kristen, you are. Hannah, are you?
Yes, hopefully. So I've got some individual artists that I'm working with, but also there's a company that I do project work with anyway, who work with disadvantaged children within the area. So I'm hoping to be able to bring them on board as part of the research and development.
Brilliant, great. And if you were having like, if you were, say for example, the Queen's, like for example, we were a partner for you, Kristen, weren't we?
Yeah.
Queen's Theatre.
Yeah.
And that's because we gave you space, we give you performance space.
Yeah.
And so we're they love partners. Like the Arts Council want you to have partners. Because it just, if you're in a partnership, it feels as if it's it's got a kind of stamp of a kind of quality, or if a partner's investing in you and your project, then it's good. It looks good. Also, it probably means you're going to deliver it as well, because you've got that pressure of working with a partner. Also probably means that you're going to reach the people that you're saying that you're going to reach if you're working in partnership. The stamp of approval is what I mean. I think those partners are really great, and it means that you've really kind of invested in the work. It's very good to have partners. Have you planned the timeline for your project? I suppose they ask this question to make sure that you're really, all of these questions, every question that they ask in the form or here is to test that it's actually going to happen, that it's going to be good, that it's going to happen, and it's going to reach the people that you said it's going to reach. It's going to do their work. It's going to reach some really brilliant underserved communities or individuals, and it's going to have an impact on people's lives. That all of these questions are just testing all of those values that exist in their kind of strategy, and they want to know that it's going to happen. So you just want to make sure that your timeline obviously is, like, Kristen, your timeline's really tight, isn't it?
I mean, I haven't kept to it, but it was in the research and development stage, but it's sort of gone all over the place in the actual doing of it. But I mean, I've still delivered everything that I said I delivered, but it definitely moved.
But for your notes project, it's quite tight, isn't it? Because you want to
Oh, sorry. Yeah, really tight. Yeah.
And if it's too tight and they look at it and go, there's no way they're going to be able to deliver that from the moment that they're told that they get the funding, you won't get the funding. So just be really, really careful, because you've got 10 weeks. Then, oh God, I can't remember. How long did it take the money to come through? It takes
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Yeah. So you've got to factor all of that time in, and then factor in all the time to organize the project as well.
I mean, I think the only, like, the first show is not going to be till like the end of March. Like the vaults, I think, will be the first one, and then the others will be after that. It's just the direct. So I think I can change the dates of that and the timeline. It's just trying to get my director. That's what I'm struggling with at the moment because of their availability. Yeah.
So they're just asking you to make sure that you're not putting in an application for something that's going to happen too soon, or that you wouldn't be able to deliver if you this is obviously with this period, and it'll be interesting to see what the guidance is for the next section. But if you, in the next form of project grants, have you considered how COVID-19 will affect the delivery of your activity? So you want to put in some mitigation there that you can still deliver it if there are social restrictions, or that you could still that you can still achieve the project. And it's a really good idea to think about that, because we're still in slightly uncharted territory in terms of the winter and what is beyond. It'll be interesting to see how they respond in their new guidance about the future, because I'm sure it will still be part of the consideration of making projects. So you're not going, we're going to do 3 weeks in a theatre and we're going to sell out at 500 a night. That's not, that hasn't considered how COVID-19 will affect the delivery of the activity. So you have kind of backup plans if things go a little awry. Did anything go awry for you, Kristen? I think you got it in okay. There wasn't any, you weren't under any social restrictions, but you probably had to rehearse here with certain restrictions in place.
Yeah, well, my Queen's rehearsal got cancelled though because of COVID. So then, so it did, I mean, but we did everything on Zoom. Like we did like a week rehearsal really on Zoom, and right. So everything got shifted around. But I definitely had to do loads of risk assessments and stuff.
And that's because somebody in your company got COVID.
So my director was working at the Old Vic, and one of their cars got taken down with COVID, so the Old Vic made her isolate.
I love it. So yeah, that's a really brilliant example to think through. What happens if the people you're working with are not well? How do you then carry on? And that's great. You just moved everything on Zoom, didn't you? Yeah, well done. So that's a really brilliant. This is do you have an application profile on our online application system? Madge, sorry, you just turned, and I'm now going to ask you a question. Tell us about Grantium, your best friend, because you had to.
Yeah, best friends. I mean, there's little things like it takes a few days to get set up, and then it takes a few more days for them to approve the initial application when you've put in how much you want to apply for. So don't leave it till the last minute, and you can do a bit every day. So, you know, I got really friendly with it in the end, but you know, you can go in and literally modify one line, and in the end, it's probably better to approach it that way and just finesse one little bit. And the other thing I did was had everything in a Word document, which I know you always advise people to do, but it's so vital. Have everything in spreadsheets and Word documents, and then put it in, because if they do then change the system in November, you've still got that initial document there. And also, if you have to reapply, you're not having to take your Grantium application, download it, take bits off it, put it back in. But also for word count, I mean, word count and the ampersand was the thing that I found myself using. I saw when the homework you made us do, someone mentioned the ampersand in that video there. But it's said you might as well just use it from the beginning, because the word count is so short. You may as well just not use and.
You end up
them all out.
Yeah, definitely. They're really good. You're so brilliant. You've got these lovely learnings from doing it, which is really great to share. So it's the online application system, isn't it, Grantium? And it's a kind of off-the-shelf thing. It wasn't bespoke for the Arts Council, so they took an off-the-shelf input application system and then sort of had it adjusted and for the Arts Council. So it's quirky and a bit frustrating at times. So definitely do your application. You have to apply. It takes about 10 days, up to 10 days to set up a user profile. To do that, if you haven't done that already, do that now. And so if there are any problems that come up, then you've got a bit of time as well. Yeah, definitely. I'm going to give you a document which is from Uncultured, an organization called Uncultured, and they've just taken all the questions from the application form. And I'll give that to you as a document. Yeah, you end up, as Mad said, the ampersand is that you end up sort of writing your application like you're texting it to your BFF or whatever it is. You know what I mean? It's like you're using like quite text. And Kristen, your application is a really good example, so I'm going to have a look at that. You just end up being incredibly economic with the language, don't you? Which is good, but you can't be flowery. There's no room for flowery.
Also, bullet points are really handy. We had a lot of partners and a lot of information to get across in some of the sections. So I used a lot of bullet points and a lot of short sentences about each thing that I was saying, rather than trying to write massive paragraphs of text.
Yeah, and I think the thing to remember, a really key thing to remember, is that it's all centralized. It never used to be. It was relationship officers were reading these applications, but it's all quite centralized in Manchester now. And I think you have to remember that the person reading it might not be somebody who understands your art form. So just don't take anything for granted. Don't take for granted that they're going to know who you are. So if you've done an application before, then you imagine that you're just speaking to somebody in a bank and doing that'll be better than talking to somebody in the bank. But you have to really spell things. You really have to spell things out. So don't take it for granted that they know about working with communities or that they have a particular expertise in theatre, or because they probably won't. They will have some knowledge, but they might have an expertise in a different art form. So just be really clear. So let's say we do. So we can start our application. So there you are. This is Grantium. This is what Grantium looks like. And we'll probably go through that at a slightly another time. So let's go through this. So they're here. If you, I'm going to put this in the chat. Oh, this is an interesting thing. Oh God, I'm not sorry, Ollie. I'm really not watching the chat. It's really hard when you're in screen share. So Blay has a historical concept. We are looking to perform in schools and to do great, brilliant. Oh great! Just saw a message pop across the screen with swearing. Who was that?
You'll see what time it was. You just want to edit it out if you're going to put it on YouTube, because a message popped up that we could all see.
Oh really? Oh, was it? Oh, like my whose is that? Who was that?
I think it was a WhatsApp or something.
Oh, brilliant!
I was just warning you so you could cut that bit
That is
out.
so brilliant. When I can't wait to see who that is. I think I know who it is. Hi, it's right. Hi, Am. I'm just in the rehearsal space, so people might come in. So here is the uncultured. Yeah, so this is what you're looking at here, which is the link to uncultured. I mean, this might change, but let's not worry about that for a moment. So this is the under 15K template. And so what they have rather brilliantly done is, I love it that Madge didn't say that out loud, that somebody's swearing in there. So what they've really brilliant done, this template is a direct copy and paste of all the information in Grantium. Total 18 pages. You cannot submit this to ACE, but instead use this as a place to write your answers and then copy and paste your answers into Grantium. So this is all of the questions. So then you can write all of this in, you can work out your character count. Did you find, it's there just because I haven't done one for a while, but the intelligence, was the character count in the Word document the same as Grantium when you pasted it in?
It seemed to me you could get away with putting a lot more in Grantium than they said. And I didn't know whether to push it or not. Partly I was tempted sometimes to get away with using those extra characters, but then I thought, what if they cut them out? So I just went with what it said in Word. But I feel like in Grantium, they give you a bit of tolerance that they don't tell you about, because that's what it seemed to be in the actual boxes.
Great. So the guidance work to your Word or pages that you have. So yeah, steal that and pop that somewhere safe, because if you can, for our sessions, if you could write your answers in this, and this is what we will look at together if you use this document. Is that all okay? So brilliant. So we're now going to have a little look at, I think, I'm going to go through the Arts Council. So this is you downloaded this, Kristen, didn't you, once you have put it into Grantium, so you can download the application. So we are going to go through the questions. So applicant, that just automatically comes up, doesn't it? On your, because when you put these details into Grantium, don't you? So that it does a certain amount of filling in for you, doesn't it? So obviously address, basic details. This goes back to that question about, this is not one sentence, but this is really useful. That question that they ask on the test is about describe your project in one sentence. So please give us a short summary of your project. So here, this project, head case, is 4 weeks of R&D. Boom, we've got the title. We've got exactly what the project is. So if it's a tour or R&D, or if it's community engagement or series of workshops on a semi-autobiographical one-person comedy show. Great, we know it's a one-person comedy show about brain injury. I mean, how can you not be interested in that? You know, it's in one sentence. We've got so much detail. Exploring themes of class and shame and challenging how we react to invisible disability in society. So that we've got the project in its essence. It's starting to expand out to sort of engagement and the kind of wider explanation, the process will allow 2 weeks of research with experts, brain injury survivors and their families with headway, and 2 weeks of rehearsal with director dramaturg, where we will develop the play to completion. So we've got this really brilliant talking about the project directly and then going a little bit deeper into exactly unpacking what that 4 weeks is. Organizational and R&D funding will allow us to make an audience tested show accompanied with a marketing strategy, online trailer, tool pack and tailored workshops to accompany national tour. So I think, Kristen, what you did really brilliant there was manage to get pretty much every part of the project in that summary.
Yeah, it took a while,
but it's pretty concise, and they know there's no waffling there. They know exactly what it is that you're asking for.
Yeah, I think I presented you with waffle and you were like, take it out. So I think, but for me, it was really helpful to put everything I wanted to say in and then just go for it and go, right, just take that out.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Just write more. I certainly have always written more and then come back, and always, it's always, obviously I will look at them at your applications, but it's really great to test this on somebody and see if they understand exactly what, at the end of it, have they just grasped in a nutshell exactly what you're asking for. So here, the amount requested and that number you probably didn't put in until the end, did you, Kristen? Yeah. Access costs, so that's if you, one thing that I haven't said is you can apply for support to write your Arts Council application if you have access needs. So for example, I work with one of our associate artists is D Live, which is a deaf-led theatre company, and Steve, because British Sign Language is his first language and English is not, is his second language, he needs access support for helping to write his application. And so I think you can have £300. There's a section, I can't remember exactly the figure, but you can apply for project grants case. Oh yeah, access support here, and that is from project grants. There is a drop down where you can see where you can get this information, and then you can get access costs for your partners if you have partners. So you can have access costs for yourself as well, not just for the application, but also for the work that you do. So if you're working with people who have access needs, we can support you if you're disabled and have a physical or mental health condition that makes it hard for you to access our services and information. So that's before you apply.
Douglas, just to ask, so some of the children that we're working with potentially could have quite complex needs.
Yeah.
So I wasn't aware that you could ask for extra support. So if it turned out that, like, for example, a high percentage of them were dyslexic or were really bad at writing, and some of what we're trying to teach them to do involved writing, could you just elaborate a little bit on how could that work?
Let's have a look. We can contribute towards the cost of an access support worker who can use the, oh no, that's for application, isn't it? For managing your project, so you can get access for managing your project. Personal access.
So for example, I've worked on funded projects before and there have been carers provided for people with additional needs.
Yeah.
Would this fall under like the bigger project or potentially this section?
You can build that in. I think it's for, let's go through. You can certainly build that into the whole project. It's whether you're applying, because that is a particular question about access needs for your partners. So let's have a look, but you can certainly build that into the cost of the whole project. That's a really, really important part of the project. So for those individuals, so it's whether it's the people participating or whether it's the people that you're actually that you're working in partnership with. So let's have a little look, because actually I haven't ever asked for that, but we want to make sure everyone can get access to and enjoy the work you fund. You can include any costs you will need to pay to make your activity accessible to a wide range of people. So there you are, BSL, making your website compatible, producing publications and materials, paying more to use a wheelchair accessible venue for an event, for example. So that really brilliant arguments, and they'll obviously just be really up for that, because it means that the work is, you know, reaching potentially underserved individuals. It's a section for partners, which I don't think is here. I might need to have a little look at where that's. Yeah, I might have to have a look about partners, but certainly you can build that into your budget if your participants need support. And I did, that's not just access needs. I think that's, you just certainly is about care workers as well. And like you can build in, so for example, you're dealing with content around trauma, for example, that you can also build in a kind of well-being package for the team that you're working with, if the subject, so if the subject matter might be quite difficult to be around for a certain amount of time, that you could build in, you know, certain kind of therapy sessions within, or coaching sessions within your project as well, to ensure the well-being of the company that you have.
So, for example, we've had like participants, and there was a psychologist there as well on a residential. But then, do you also mean like someone there to support the facilitators, carers, anyone that might be also like handling that as well?
Definitely. Yeah, I think you can build that in for your creative team. You can build that in for your acting company. But you know, if you're working around really, really difficult subject matter, that might, you know, affect the well-being of the company that you're working with, you can build that into it as well, into the project. So I need to have a look at this about collaborators' personal access costs. So if there are extra costs relating to your own access needs, or those of the people you're working with to help you deliver your project and manage your grant online, include them in this figure here. For example, payment for a sign language interpreter to help you manage your project. If your personal access costs take your request over £15,000, we will treat your application as an application for £15,000 and under. Yeah, that's a really important point. So those access costs that you're applying for are separate to the rest of the amount that you're making. So it wouldn't push you over the limit. To find out more personal access costs, please read the information sheet. Access support. Okay. Project dates. So you start date and end date. You might not be able to do that until you've worked out your timeline. Yes. So they haven't. So here on that form, I'm just going to dig out the form because it's not there. Our 10-year strategy, Let's Create, has 3 outcomes. Tell us which are outcomes listed below you will think. I think there's a drop-down box, isn't there, that you choose. So on the form, it's creative people, everyone. So these are 3 options. Creative people, everyone can develop and express creativity throughout their life. The second one is cultural communities. Villages, towns, and cities thrive through a collaborative approach to culture. 3, a creative and cultural country. England's cultural sector is innovative, collaborative, and international. Those three are creative people. Everyone can develop and express creativity throughout their lives. So that is focused on the individuals being creative. Quite often that might be volunteer, that might be volunteer, that might be the volunteer sector, that might be a community choir, that might even increasingly now, because they're looking to fund amateur theatre. But that's more about those organizations. With the second, cultural communities, villages, towns and cities thrive for a collaborative approach to culture, is where the artists and the communities come together collaboratively to make the work or experience the work. So for example, Creative People and Places, which is the project, so Madge, obviously you've had a brilliant, played a really brilliant part in the Havering Changing. That's Creative People and Places, which is about a placemaking project. Villages, towns and cities thrive for a collaborative approach to culture. So that's where the artists and the communities are coming together to create the work or curate the work. And then the creative and cultural country, England's cultural sector is innovative, collaborative and international, is about the industry. So that is still there. So even though it's a let's create, it's very, very focused on the individual, and that every individual has the right to develop and express creativity throughout their life. It also recognizes that we need a cultural sector, an industry that is innovative, collaborative and international. So that it's excellent, it's working in partnership, but equally, even though post-Brexit, that we are working internationally as well. So that may, you don't have to work internationally to tick that to tick that box, but that is about creative excellence, about development and innovation and collaboration. So which one would yours fit in? Kristen, which one is yours?
I can only see one.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not there. There you go.
Oh God, my eyes. How do I feel? I can't see that, Doug. That's tiny.
It's on that form. I think yours is the third one. And it's interesting that you chose the second one, because I think your project probably was the third one and not the second one.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But you got the money, so you know what I mean? It's like, I think this is really hard for people to understand unless you've gone through the Let's Create. But I think
I'm pretty sure you told me which one to do.
Did I? Oh God. Madge, which one is yours?
I think because maybe we applied before. I'm not sure. I'll look back while we're chatting. I'll have a look.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder which one. Probably because you're working with artists. Well, no, because you're going to be working with looked after children. I wonder if that probably might come from. It might be great. Go on.
I think the new one would be everyone being creative, because the whole aspect of it is going to be nurturing each of the children to create a portfolio and to work with artists and to learn artistic skills.
Yeah,
I think
that sounds like it's the first one. Yeah.
I think the other one that we did, because it was artists and community, was quite possibly the one that's on screen now.
Yeah. Great. I mean, I think Kristen might not have chosen. I'm not sure I might have told you the wrong one, but it didn't stop you. So.
Do they want you just to choose one?
Yeah.
On that? Or yeah.
No, which of our outcomes? It might be more than one. So you might be able to choose more than one. What we want to know, I think the big thing about this, so looking at the form that I've given you, which is a copy of this, is try and always make sure that you're referring back. These are really brilliant guidelines to what you should be answering. And if you write it, so if you write your section and then come back and you go, measure it against this bold blue text, a bold black text, and make sure that you check it against it, because they're really putting this together. This is when we look at your answers to these questions, we will think about how strong your idea is. So then go write your idea and then go, is it strong? How clearly you've expressed your aims. If you've demonstrated that your project is likely to achieve its ambition, if the project will strongly develop the work skills of the people, organizations involved, just double, check that back. It probably feels quite obvious when you read it, but then when you've written the work, go back and check. So this first one is equality. Now, it's really hard writing about yourself. How was it writing about yourself, Kristen?
Bit cringe.
We're so terrible, aren't we? Yeah, don't find it cringe. Just find everything that you have done and put it in there. So you want, I mean, it's stuff that's relevant. It's relevant is really important, obviously. And why are they asking this? Why are they asking this question?
Well, I guess is to show that you can deliver the work, or that you
Going to be of quality.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And you can deliver it. Yeah, that you've got the expertise, the skills, to be able to deliver it. I mean, it doesn't mean that you can't take risk, because obviously then there's also a question about personal development as well. So the project should be furthering your craft or exploration, creative exploration. So here, I'm an actor, creative producer, and workshop facilitator from Havering, Essex. I performed at venues like Southwark Playhouse, Boom. There's like a posh theatre that we might know about. It's not that posh, but we probably know what it is, King's Head and the Roundhouse. So quality, 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 all there. I recently produced and performed in my own device show, which sold out at the old Red Lion. And that's relevant experience there, isn't it? Produced and performed my own device show, which sold out. That's like, because this is another one, this is a one person show. So that shows that there's experience not only of performing and making it, but also producing it. As a creative producer, I've secured and managed over 50,000 K for creative projects. I was awarded 11K by Brent Council. That's great. You've got a previous history of getting funding to produce films and lead workshops that would engage young people from disenfranchised areas. So great, you've got experience of working with underserved communities. The films produced appeared as feature shorts through the main programs of the Lexi and Tricycle Cinemas. And even though it's not about making theatre, it just shows a kind of level of experience. The films were shown to 80,000 people at Olympic Torch Relay, recognition, BFI Film Award nomination, Cannes Short Film Festival, London Short Film Festival. Really great. So this shows that, Kristen is, working on in a different medium, but on a particular level, which, if they're transferable skills, that's really brilliant. And clearly they are transferable skills. Oh, sorry, I didn't black that one out. As an associate of, so then we've got all the partners. So we've got the person that she's working with, creative, which is not necessarily that you have to put it in this section, because it comes later. But if you have the room, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to put it in there. Then tell us more about the project. So, you want to big yourself up, think about all the experience that is relevant. And that might be, so for example, Kristen, I don't think you were sure about putting the film stuff in the first time that you did that application.
No, I think you said to me and I think what I tried to sell it on is about transferring the skills that I've learned in film to theatre. And so I think that's why I put it in there, because I wasn't sure, because I thought it just wasn't relevant. And then, you said that it was.
Great. Tell us more about your project and what you want it to achieve. So in that first project summary, you had to be really concise, use really economic language. This is the opportunity to obviously to expand that. I mean, you unpack the summary, here particular, put who is involved, put the partners if you haven't already. This is really where the art comes in as well, and the ideas come in. So this is this thing going back to how strong your idea is. That first section is about your track record in delivering good quality work. So here is really where you should unpack the art and do.
Doug, can I ask, when you're talking about your experience, when you then are doing the funding for like the tour, are you writing the same thing again?
Yeah, but yeah, you are. I think that's there'll be the delivery of touring will be slightly different, of delivering a tour, because they might question how you're going to be able to do it.
Okay.
But it will be, yeah, it'll be really similar. I mean, the brilliant thing about writing these applications, once you've done one, particularly that section around who you are and the quality, is you can cut and paste and move it in. But obviously you would have moved on because you've actually delivered. And what you do is, I'm experienced here, I have delivered an ACE funded project of X amount of money.
Great.
You've already, the brilliant thing about Arts Council, for once you've had one, it's quite hard for them not to, if it's a good project, not fund the second one, because you've already proved a quality, particularly, you know, your evaluation and you talk about the delivery of that project and what the impact. I delivered this project, it did this, it had these outcomes, it changed people's lives. You know, then you talk about that project, don't you? So that, Kristen, you will write about the first part of the project.
Okay.
The R&D in that you successfully delivered. So you'll probably, you might want to take a quote that somebody says about the projects that you delivered. If you've got room to put little quotes in of what other people have said about your work, then that's good. I mean, you get the opportunity to put a separate document that has more detail about your work if you want, but it's quite nice to have this kind of, I often use quotes in here just to big it up. If you've got a 5-star review, put a little quote from it.
Can I, because I'm obviously only doing one sharing, so I doubt that's going to be reviewed, but if I use like Headway and the workshops I've done, if I take those snippets out and how that's helped people, or maybe people with brain injury that have commented at this stage.
Definitely. And audience, you know, or participant quotes, if you can get them. So Sarah, if you're doing something which is, you're delivering workshops online, if you've got previous participant, or you can ask somebody to write something about your work in that quality section, then do use references from other people.
Yeah, I was just thinking about like Haffle's projects and how like they're very particular about monitoring and filling out like kind of forms, and like at the beginning, you know, how are you feeling, what kind of smiley faces and things. And I was just wondering how to apply that to online work. So yeah, that's really great. Thank you.
Yeah. So if you've got anything that, and you know, anybody said anything about your work, and it's a project that feels quite similar, then do use it. So here we're unpacking, I mean, still not a huge amount of room, but here we go. 1 hour, one person theatre show about brain injury. Imagine waking up in Essex in 1980s, no prior knowledge of the county or decade you find yourself in. In 1987, this happened to my father. He awoke from a coma with no memory, a new personality, and the inability to sing. Incorporating accessible forms of comedy and music, this show will explore the devastating effects of invisible disability. And I think the personal stuff is really important. I think because not, you know, just that emotion, like we want to see, I think quite often people don't write passionately. That's why I say this is about the art, and this is about you as an artist, that just make sure that in the idea that there is a bit of passion, and that there's a bit of, there's a bit of art in there, and emotions. And the brilliant thing is we've got the accessible forms of comedy and music the show will explore. So we know it already feels like a really exciting project, because it's taking a really deep experience, quite a painful experience, but it's saying that I'm going to make it in such a way that it will feel accessible to everybody using comedy and music, which is, you know, that's a kind of winner, really. University of Exeter report described traumatic brain injury as a silent epidemic. It's so brilliant because now Kristen is now talking about why it has to be done. So you've got why now? Why is this project being made now? That's, why does it have to be made now? And that's because, and it's great to use quotes from, from newspaper, the Guardian says this, or this university, this academic report says this, or this quote from a political leader or an activist, or that backs up why it needs to be made and why you feel passionate about it. Head injury is the commonest cause of death and disability in people 1 to 40 years, and because yet again back to this person's not going to know this stuff, so the person reading it is not going to know, so you sort of want to make them get passionate about the project, even though they're going through like thousands of applications. You really want to tell a great story. And because it's about making art, we're making narratives, aren't we? So use our brilliant skills. We are really brilliant at storytelling. And creating really brilliant narratives. So use this section to do that. There's a growing body of research on the overrepresentation of people with brain injuries in the prison population. So we've got something very personal. We've got a sense of its accessibility. We've got a sense of why it's so important that it's made now. Myself and director will gather research from experts at Headway. So we're going into that R&D, more detail, connect with survivors of families using online community health unlocked. Myself and Laura will grab this information, our existing draft, and enter the rehearsal room with a brain injury survivor. There's a real thing about authenticity here. There's about, in the making of the work, connecting with the people that it will that there'll be authenticity there, but it also will, by being involved in the making of the project, it will have an impact on them. Using improvisation and devising techniques, we will develop the play to completion. It will be tested at Ealing Studios, the Queen's Theatre, Hornchurch, and Our Drama School. So they've got partners in there as well, which is good. We'll create and test creative workshops that will run alongside our national tour aimed at emerging artists from Havering, 4th lowest level of public arts engagement in London. And that's really important, that if it's in particular places and you've got some stats, that's, those things are really compelling arguments to why. So Kristen, touring, you will be digging out stats about particular areas that you go, or if like the venues have particular relationships with communities that you're going to target.
Right.
So you might go to a venue because it has existing relationships with particular audiences or community groups. We will cultivate new relationships with venues throughout to help us begin the process of developing a 10-venue gig tour with wraparound activities once our R&D is completed. So this is really great because, particularly with an R&D, this is for you, Hannah, as well. This is a really great thing because it doesn't just talk about that project, that this is an essential part of the R&D, which is about thinking and putting things in place to ensure there is a future life. So if you're doing R&D, and even kind of, if you're doing a big project, that if you can allude to a future life for the project, that you're going to work to have that in place, then they know, the Arts Council know that they're investing in something that could have a longer life. So they're getting more for their money. They want to invest in things that will go on. Particularly if it's an R&D, that's a really important thing to go, that is part of that project, is the investigation or the inviting partners to see the work, using it as a calling card for your work as an artist, and talk about who that might be. And that's in your engagement section as well. Tell us how this project will help develop your work. I've already completed 3 R&D weekends on this project and forged relationships with the Queen's Theatre and Headway. I have over an hour's worth of content and an existing drop, but unfortunately, due to the lack of funding, I haven't been able to afford any more time. ACE funding would enable me to complete this theatre piece and collaborate with a highly established So that's good because you're working with you're working with a high quality artist, so collaborator, which means that you're going to develop. It's really great if you're working with artists that have a skill set that you might not have, or are working on a level that you haven't worked on before. From working with blah, blah, blah on this project, I will learn the skills needed to produce a full-length theatre show. I'll be introduced to designers, stage managers, and broker new partnerships. I will forge new relationships with theatre venues and outside spaces, so our show is COVID-friendly. Funding would enable me the time to create acting, writing workshops that will be targeted at people with invisible disability, their families, and people that may not ordinarily have access to the arts. As an intersectional working class woman from Havering in Essex, gaining access to the arts growing up was extremely difficult. So this narrative about barriers that you've overcome, that you're a working class artist, Havering Borough has the 4th place, in London is at the bottom 33% of places nationally. It's taken me a long while to be able to carve a career in the creative sector after often being overlooked because of my lack of education and my Essex accent. Love that. At the end of this project, I will have devised my first theatre piece and made the transition from creatively producing film to theatre. So that's a really compelling, they want to invest in the development of you and the development of your work. So there'll be an interesting one for you, Madge, about that first book and then producing a second book, how that will develop you as an artist, further, what is going to be different from that project and this project for you as an artist. What the compelling, and that might be, working with different people, might be working with more challenging people, that be expanding your skills to facilitate different underserved communities. And I suppose what you learned from that first project and how you would better that, but that is about you as an artist, that section. Yeah. They want to invest in the development of artists, and that is part of that. They give you a number this is another drop down one, so you would tick the, I think you probably ticked most of them actually, Kristen. You get a drop down box to tick here, which is the project will, and this is so that they can collect data and go, we funded X amount of projects that worked with new people, or this is about a data collection for them. Working with new people, creating or commissioning new work, reaching new or different audiences, trying out new approaches, undertaking organizational development, undertaking professional development. You don't feel that you need to fulfill all of those, but certainly you should be ticking a handful of them. So you've got organizational development, professional development, trying out new approaches, reaching new and different audiences, creating or commissioning new work, working with new people. And then we go into who you're going to work with. So we're still on quality here. This is still all about quality. Who else is involved? And you can, this is a good thing because you work with artists and creators or specialists. Well, this is delivering, but you could be working with specialists. And you work with specialists on your project, didn't you, Kristen?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You can include up to 10. You don't need to include yourself. God, is it only 10? If you're working with anyone who is helping to deliver or manage your project, please tell us about them later in a separate partner section. Please read the quality section on how to apply guidance for this one. You get quite a bit of room because you can see here it's ... But on the Grantium, I think this is a really brilliant place to use up. So don't write about the artists in the other section. You can mention them, but here you've got to really big up how brilliant these people are. Don't just go, freelance director. You want to go, they've worked with, skills of devising and creating with Wise Children, North Wall, and many others. But I mean, then you went on, it was quite detailed in that. Freelancer will work alongside me. You want to really big them up. The Arts Council want to know that you're working with really amazing people. So where you bigged yourself up earlier on, this is a thing to make, they just need to make sure the people that you're working with know what they're doing and can deliver what you want them to deliver. Go on, Mad.
I was told if they've done amazing tours, like, because we were working with visual artists, so talk about where they've exhibited, just get name drop as much as you can in this section about the artist.
Yeah, definitely. And you get I don't think there's a limit on characters in this, is there? I don't think there is. So I think you can put quite a big chunk in there for them. So don't, that's the point where you don't have to be so economic about the language that you're using. Yeah, because here you are. This is what, sorry, yeah, because then you get this printout, don't you? So look at all these characters that Kristen is using to talk about their work. And I would go, you could even go, you can write in there, and they will enable this project to do this, this, and this, and this, and this. You don't, if you feel that you haven't had space in the previous section, you could say what the impact is, how will they contribute to the project, give a brief description of their work. So they want that. How will they contribute? What are they going to do to the project? So it's not just a CV, but exactly what how important it is that they're part of the project and what they will do. And here, yeah, you've got a Oxford University professor, PhD. It's not just about artists. And I think it's really, often really interesting to be working with and particularly in a project like this, to be working with some expertise that's going to give it a sense of authority and insight. So if you're looking to work with particular people, particular community groups, or if you're looking to work with in a scientific field or something that is slightly out, or if you're working on Rebecca Brewer, she did Coven with a piece about witches, and she worked with a magician. Or she worked with, or in her R&D, she worked with a puppeteer, she worked with a where you could shadow puppeteer. That's what so you could be working with all these amazing different artists, all these amazing experts, academic experts, or people who really are at the top of the field that you might be working in. Yeah, so this is, if you would like to include a document or web link to give us a sense of your work, you can do it here. This is like big time winner. And I didn't see yours, Kristen. You never sent it, but obviously I've got your final application. I finally saw it. It's insane. It's really amazing what you put together.
Oh, really? I didn't. Great.
It's really good. It's so detailed and it's so beautifully put. I think it's at the end. Don't worry about all these pages I'm going through then. It looks like there's 1,000 pages to do. Oh yeah, I think it scanned it weirdly, but pictures.
It was all in color. It's come out in black and white, but
Yeah, because I scanned it in black and white. Yeah. Visuals are really great because they haven't seen anything visual in your application. Previous projects, and there were more pages on this, and then loads of links like Pinterest, music. You really went there. Like, you've given them an insight into what your project is. And I think even if they didn't click on them, they would go, so much thought has been put into the process. This person has really thought about this project. The research that you've done. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen anyone do this much detail about the project, but you brilliantly, you get a certain amount of memory to upload, data to upload, and you managed to pack it in, like, so much more information about the project. Well, I've never seen anyone do that before, but it's like,
Oh,
that document, I mean, make it what you want, use it to really sell you, engage the person who's reading. And they might just flick through, but they will go, this is really thought through, because there's some of the art in there, which is a really great.
yeah, I think I put pictures somewhere of the R&D as well. So they were only taken on my phone, but I just took pictures of like post-it notes and chucked that, like stuff like that as well.
You can have press quotes, so you can have a CV. I think if you've got links to websites, then you can put those in and use this. I think the kind of visual documentation is really great. Press quotes. You can have things, references, things that people say about your work. So in that other section, you might have like one line. Here, if you've got a whole load of participants who said really amazing things about your workshops, put them here. If you've got people that references and people that you've worked with or delivered work for, put them here. If there are pictures of your work or pictures of marketing materials of your work, then definitely put them there. Yeah, that's a really, really great place to be able to expand, because obviously you just don't have that much space. So I am going to stop at that point because we're getting near the end and I've got to go to see the preview at 7:30. So so we just take those sections so far, because then we'll go into partners and we'll go into the income section a little bit later. And what will be really great before the next section is if you read that uncultured document and go through all of those questions. So we've gone through the briefs around the project and we've gone into the quality section, and next we will and what I'd love you to do is write up those sections before the next time. Is that all right? And you could tackle the other questions. I mean, I would tackle the other questions and then we can unpack them together. Which is really the section about public engagement, but we have spoken about that briefly. Are there any questions around these sections? So we've got quality, and we've got the summary, we've got the quality, the work about you. We go into the so you've got your experience, we've got the bigger brief, we've got about how it would develop your work, and then we've got the artists who are involved. Are there any questions about those sections?
Just I was gonna, sorry, go on, go.
Yeah, come on, Kristen.
Okay. Just when you're doing it for because it's for the tour, so everything in my head is like for R&D funding. I haven't like nailed down all the venues yet. So do you think write it with like my wish lists of venues or who's attached to the payment? And
well, I mean, you can be, yeah, right. Oh yeah, but you wouldn't submit what you want. You want those venues penciled. Don't submit. Yeah. You need them penciled.
Yeah.
The more, and it's kind of, this is the golden rule really for any project, the more confirmed the partnerships or the performances or the workshops, the more confirmed they are, the more concrete they are, the more likely the project, the funding is going to happen. If it's really vague, you won't get it's pretty unlikely that you will get the funding.
Yeah, so should I...
Just
waiting for answers. So shall I just write it with I'm not going to submit it. Yeah. So
yeah, just write it with them in mind. Yeah. So that you can also start to work out how it's all going to function. So if you write you those venues that you said to me earlier on, just keep those. Yeah, write it. Yeah, write a wish. And then you can start to work out how that
I've got like a 2-week rehearsal process in there. Is that okay to include all that within that package?
Yeah.
Great. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. So the more concrete it is, definitely the more, because if you what happens at the panel at the Arts Council is they have a whole load of applications on the table that week. And if, say, for example, there are 2 tours and that the quality of them is the same and the budget and everything is the same. But if you've got unconfirmed tour and somebody else has got a confirmed tour, they're more likely to
Go with the confirmed.
fund the confirmed tour. So you want to just, what you want to do is just make sure there are no holes
Yeah.
at all in your application, so that they can't pull anything apart or question anything or worry about the delivery of it.
Cool.
And just make it as tight as you possibly can and as certain as you can. Madge, you were going to ask something.
It was a more general question, but then I realised halfway through what you want us to do. So I was thinking, oh, if we're doing this on Grantium, but we don't know how much we're asking for, how can we start the application? But then I realised you don't want us to touch Grantium yet. You just want us to do it in that link that you sent.
Yeah.
And don't start anything on there yet until we know how much we're going for and all the rest. Yeah.
Yeah, just do it in that document. Yeah, I think Grantium is, you're fine because you've done it before, but if you're new to Grantium, I think it's just such a scary thing to start. I mean, do set up your profile, user profile, but yeah, start in that document. So has everybody managed to download that document? It's in the chat, so I don't know if it was in the, because when you come in a teeny bit later, you sometimes don't pick up the chat, do you? I'm going to stop share so we can see everybody.
Yeah, I've only got the uncultured link, so I haven't got it.
But yeah, no, that's that one. And I'll send an email around and with the other links as well. And some other useful information. Yeah, so fill out that, but I would go through the rest of the application on that document, so the uncultured document, and particularly if you can start to think, we were starting to talk about it earlier on, but who is it for and how are you going to reach them is one to really start thinking about now. So if you can just write some bullet points for those questions, because that's the hardest bit, I think. That's because you've got to come up with a kind of you've got to think about who it's for. You've got to think about a kind of marketing plan of how to reach those people, and particularly for you, Kristen, about touring. And Hannah, just thinking about the future life of the project, and then also who will come to, if you're going to have a sharing, who's going to come to that, how many people, how are you going to make sure that they get there, that they're going to be there. Just start thinking about that, because that's the hardest, that's where everybody falls down, is on the public engagement. Yeah. Great. Is there anything else? Go on, Hannah.
No, I was just going to say that's really helpful. Thank you.
Great. How are your brains?
All right.
All right.
Yeah.
Fuzzy.
Yeah, ready for a glass of wine.
And if you've got any questions between now and our next meet, so when are we meeting next? We're meeting on the 20th. Yeah. Wednesday the 20th.
I put one thing in the chat, Douglas, which is something I'm going to next week at Space Ilford about audience engagement. It may or may not help people who are struggling with defining their audiences, but I think it's only £5 as an artist. It's a whole day talking about it. Might be a bit philosophical. It might not actually help with grant writing, but I think probably for most of us, the audience and defining how you engage them is one of the hardest parts of writing the grant. So if anyone's interested in going to it, I'll put the link in there, or I can feed back what comes out of it. If there's anything relevant, I can feed it back to the group.
That sounds amazing. That sounds really brilliant. That'd be great. Madge, if you could feedback, if people can't go, that'd be really, really helpful. Because
if any documents, I can share that with the group. Yeah, by email.
Yeah, thank you for doing that.
And if there are any questions in between now and then, just drop me a line.
Oh, thank you.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Good night.
All right,
you.
brilliant.
Thank
So
you,
I'll see
everyone.
you in like a week and a half.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.